Well, Shepard, I have to apologize to the audience for a slightly late start. I just got a strike moments before going on with you, and it's unclear. I believe this is not going to be going out on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel. How are you this morning, or this afternoon, I should say, Shepard? Good to see you.
Oh, good to see you, man. As good as I can be, with everything that's going on in the world. And yeah, I've been having trouble with YouTube. I've been having trouble with technical issues. It seems like the internet's going up and down everywhere. I've been getting stories all over, from all of our listeners and readers, and it's just wild what's going on right now. But I feel like I'm under attack more than ever. Jason, I mean, they even sent a targeting team literally to where I was the other day.
What do you mean?
I guess last week now, and they were threatening me and people I was with. I don't really want to get into it, but I'm telling you, it really happened, and they must be getting desperate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm monitoring the Jason Goodman YouTube channel right here, and it's telling me that there's a strike and the content has been removed. Now, people who watch the show regularly, we won't even talk about what that content is right now, because it's possible that the mere mention, this live stream is not going right now on the Jason Goodman channel. But luckily, Shepard, I've put into place a number of redundant systems that allow people to access the show, specifically when things like this happen. And curiously, these redundant systems provide me with clues as to how this could have occurred. This was not an automatic removal by YouTube. We know that YouTube has algorithms that identify certain things, and there are instances where content should be removed. People should not be allowed to post false, defamatory statements that target other people. It's interesting, however, that when social engineers and various malicious individuals around the internet have done that with just totally false statements about me, targeting me, attempting to smear me and destroy this company, my business, my personal life, YouTube doesn't do anything about that. But I think some of those same people have alerted YouTube to a particular piece of content and misrepresented certain things about it in an effort to get it taken down. I want to direct viewers who are seeing us right now to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, where I've got multiple redundant elements in place that allow people to watch this live stream right now as it's happening. I also want to make sure, Shepard, that our viewers know that they can get content from you daily by going to your fantastic website, Intellihub.com. People can get there. You just type in Intellihub.com, and you've got a lot of great stories on there. What have you prepared for us today, Shepard?
Well, Jason, this is getting out of control. My investigation, as some of the listeners know, has taken many twists. I started out investigating COVID-19. The nenext thing you know, I found out there were a lot of links with this COVID-19 to certain groups. I was talking about how the COVID death map is controlled by the Johns Hopkins University, and so are near-Earth asteroids through this Project DART. And I went down.
The asteroids are also, that data is controlled by Johns Hopkins?
Yes, actually the program, the double asteroid redirection test, the actual kinetic impactor program that they have to mitigate asteroids is headed up by the Johns Hopkins University.
Wow.
So, yeah, so there's a lot of connections. But so that led me down this path that ended up, where I got a hold of these government documents, whitehouse.gov, international working group papers where they formed bodies, and they said, look, in June of 2018, they said, this is going to get bad. There's all these asteroids. We talked about this on your show. I kept saying these lockdowns are for something else. I was basically the first person I was saying, no one was saying this. I was saying these lockdowns are going to go on for years. I was saying how they're going to lift them, put them back, lift them, put them back incrementally. This isn't going to end. and talking about the possibility of a natural disaster or a celestial object that's moving into our solar system that's affecting space weather, the sun, and possibly flinging asteroids into the planet now and stuff like that. But so I do all that. And then I started my radio show up and got all that going. And I was kind of sidetracked, but I got back into investigating things. And I started investigating COVID again. And basically is what we uncovered on my show. I mean, the information I have to this date, what, a quick way to explain it is, and, we talked about this on your show, Jason, because, John Colin was on and he brought the flu numbers and we were talking how it was abnormally high flu and all this. So basically is what I found out is, there's the normal coronavirus. It exists. That's about it. This new thing is called COVID. It's some kind of operational name. I now almost have proof of that. So there's a lot of evidence that goes back to Fauci, Gates, and others, and we'll get into that. But this COVID, I was speculating, was some kind of operation that was allowing the military to be rolled out worldwide and put into place, possibly due to some kind of calamity that was coming, the eruption of Yellowstone super volcano, or asteroid impacts, or the passing of Planet X, which is going to cause a disruption and perturb things if that's the case. And they've openly admitted planets are moving into our solar system. So just things could be happening. The sun's changing, stuff like that. But I feel like they're all over these disasters. I'm seeing this in their papers. So I go and I research COVID again, and we get whistleblowers on the show, and they're calling in from everywhere, but out of the medical industry, and they're saying, look, they're shoving these ventilators down people's throats and they're dying from that. They had anxiety. That's about it. Then they're logging every single death as COVID, and they're hyperinflating the numbers, and they're causing panic in the media. And then they got the mask issue and the lockdowns, and then they're doing all these unconstitutional things right now. And we talked about on your show how, what's the real reason for this lockdown? Because it's not COVID, basically. And so I get back into this actual COVID investigation, and then I come across this World at Risk annual report on global preparedness for health emergencies. And this is the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board. Now, Dr. Fauci is on this board. Now, also on this board is some other key players like Dr. George F. Gao. He's the Director General of the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention, People's Republic of China.
Wait a minute, that guy was part of Event 201, wasn't he?
Yes, exactly. It's all going to dovetail. You're going to see this. Now, Dr. Chris Elias, he's president of the Global Development Program for Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Yeah, he was also there.
One, right? It's all these characters that are all part of this thing. Now, it gets even crazier. We'll talk about it later, and I'll get into it more. But basically, I get a hold of this thing, a World at Risk annual report on global preparedness for health emergencies. Now, this is a Global Preparedness Monitoring Board. Fauci's on this. Now, it's like they're doing this top-down fire cell approach, globalist master plan, which basically reveals in this white paper, this is insanity. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Total insanity. It reveals in this paper that a natural disaster, quote, natural disaster or biological release may be on the way. Now, listen to this. COVID, like I've always been saying, is a cover for something else. They are not doing this just because of COVID. They're also not doing this just to usher in the New World Order. Now, they're not letting a good crisis go to waste, and they've ramped everything up full on, and they're going Rockefeller lockstep in the whole 9 yards. But there's new information I obtained. I've got it at Intellihub.com. The article is called Dr. Fauci, Bill Gates, Others Profiteering from World-Scale Respiratory Illness Racketeering Scheme. New information obtained by Intellihub reveals that Dr. Anthony Fauci is listed on the board of directors of the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board, and appears to be involved in a mammoth worldwide racketeering network scheme.
Wow.
In which a prefabricated and deliberately contrived health crisis has been used as a means to lock down and suppress human activity worldwide, while allowing the perpetrators of the dastardly, multifaceted, and multi-pronged agenda to loot the proverbial coffers of the people and government, simultaneously paving the way for a new world order police state, basically.
Now, wait a minute, Shepard, where is that language coming from? You're reading it from this report?
No, that's I actually wrote that.
You're
no,
Intellihub. Wow.
Yeah, we're going to get into some quotes in this report, and you're going to start seeing this, and it's going to get weird. So the GPMB is comprised of experts from non-governmental organizations, academic institutions, national governments, and multilateral agencies. This is in the article, Jason, titled Dr. Fauci, Bill Gates, Others, Profiteering from World-Scale Respiratory Illness. It's down there a little way, maybe around there somewhere. And it says, experts from non-governmental organizations, academic institutions, national governments, and multilateral agencies, including the World Health Organization and the World Bank Group, respectively. The board's main purpose within itself is to urge political action. Now, quote, multilateral agencies. Now, to no surprise, the board has ties to just about anything and everything that's COVID-19 related, including the purported pandemic itself, which seems to be nothing more than a tool that is being used to further control the populace. In a nutshell, the board works independently of all parties, including its conveners, to provide the most frank assessments and recommendations possible, as the agency's annual report states. Now, this separation of the board and the conveners basically acts as a buffer. It provides a degree of legal protection to all those involved. So there's clever verbiage within this board's latest annual report titled A World at Risk Annual Report on Global Health Preparedness Emergencies. And basically in it, it says, the findings, interpretations, conclusions, and opinions expressed in this report and by board members represent their views and only not those of the organizations or co-conveners. So they have all their bases covered. But this is what the document that the whole world is working off of. And this is brought on by the World Bank and the World Health Organization. And the goals of the board are to assess the world's ability to protect itself from health emergencies, identify critical gaps to preparedness across multiple perspectives, and also advocate for preparedness activities with national and international leaders and decision makers. Now, the first annual report literally serves as a roadmap. This is a 5-year roadmap to its stakeholders and identifies 7 potential threats that conspirators claim world leaders must implement to prepare for pressing threats, including natural disasters. Now, this is what's crazy because this is like an actual quote. They're talking about stakeholders. And then in actual quote, they're talking about they must implement to prepare for pressing threats and then natural disasters. Now, right out of the paper, this is coming out of their paper, it says the board analyzed evidence, commissioned 7 review papers that explore the challenges of preparedness through various lenses, governance, and coordination, country preparedness capabilities, research and development, financing, enhancing community engagement and trust, in preparing for managing the fallout of high-impact respiratory pathogen pandemics, and lessons learned and persistent gaps revealed by recent outbreaks of Ebola virus, disease in Africa. The board has drawn on these papers and other data to identify areas where preparedness efforts are working and where they are faltering. So basically, this board is set up. They're using it as a tool to get this out to everyone. Now, they talk about in this, now this is in the World at Risk document right here. It says future reports will monitor progress on preparedness for other types of health emergencies, such as those caused by natural disasters. Now, why the stockpile of ventilators? Why are the masks available on every street corner in America and worldwide now? Why are masks required, even though the CDC admits the general public doesn't even need to wear them? All of this dovetails with intel that I got back in 2014, where they may be prepping for the eruption of a supervolcano, but with all that, they actually had contracts with foreign governments, including Argentina and Brazil and others, and for tens of billions of dollars. I mean, actually, like hundreds of billions of dollars in total. And, are they going to displace this population? Like, what's going on? So then there's the Kodak moment where I'm sitting there, I'm writing this article, and I'm thinking, okay, I just remember Bill Gates and Melinda Gates smiling really big, and they had these real diabolic looking smirks on their faces, and they were basically they were saying, well, I guess this thing wasn't that bad this time, but next time, it's going to be bad or something like that, and they're kind of like, and they're just like, they look like little demon beasts, but these 7 urgent actions to prepare the world for health emergencies that comes out of this. So this is how they're doing this. So these 7 urgent actions outlined by this board that Fauci's on, and these other guys from Event 201 and the Bill Gates and all that. So their actions are: these heads of government must commit and invest. Countries and organizations must lead by example. All countries must build strong systems. Countries, donors, and multilateral institutions must be prepared for the worst. Keep in mind, we know COVID's like not really going around like they say. No. Financial institutions must link preparedness with financial risk planning. Development assistance funders must create incentives and increase funding for preparedness. The United Nations must strengthen coordination mechanisms. So the architects of this scheme, they're all using this top-down approach. In fact, the plan demands that the G7, the G20, and the G77 member states and regional intergovernmental organizations must follow through on their political and funding commitments. And so they're inserting their own players throughout society at the highest levels, people like Dr. Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, and others, and they're getting them into all these places and all these governments, and this is how they're doing it. And they're using this COVID thing as a thing. So in this paper, what I gathered out of it is it's talking about, it calls on the IMF and the World Bank to urgently prepare to mitigate financial risk based on pandemic fallout. Now, they're going ahead and they're planning all this stuff, but what it really looks like this whole thing is about is they invented this 201. They got this thing going. They're claiming this COVID's going around when it's probably just a normal coronavirus or something of that nature. And the testing, we all know, is real weird and all this stuff. So the tests are actually, this is admitted by the CDC, they're just testing for coronavirus antibodies and common cold antibodies, openly admitted by the CDC now. And so basically, if you've ever had the cold or common coronavirus, you're going to test positive. That's that.
We've also heard, Shep, from Dr. Judy Mikovits, that coronaviruses, as you're pointing out, it's a common virus and it's even a component of flu vaccines. So people who have received these flu vaccines are very likely to test positive for coronavirus. What they're not telling us about these tests that's really kind of obvious to many people is that you say, okay, you've got the virus, but is it making you sick? Are these cases?
They don't really have the virus per se. So like if they have a coronavirus and they go and get tested, it's going to show that they have COVID. If they have a cold, if they've taken a flu vaccine, which has attenuated coronavirus in it and stuff like that, then they're going to test out. And there's also tests giving false positives and all this stuff. But basically, if you've been sick before, these tests are going to tell you you have this COVID. I mean, that's basically like the gist of it. And then they're getting all this money for it. Now, this is just getting wilder and wilder. So I've now interviewed whistleblowers out of the medical industry who have came out and they said they're manipulating the medical records and all this stuff, and they're listing people as COVID positive, and it goes on, and it's this big racketeering scheme. But it's not just about this racketeering scheme. They're literally mixing natural disasters in their paperwork, and they're basically saying, like, look, this is what I gathered out of it. It doesn't like come out and say this, but it basically says, look, we designed COVID because we know something else is coming, and we got to get the whole world ready for it.
When you say they know something else is coming, how do they know unless they've created it and they're planning to release it?
Okay, so when I'm talking about something else that's coming, it could be several things. Now, right away, people's minds might go to like a release of a Biden or something like that, which they did talk about and all that. Now, I don't believe that. I have enough information to think that it's a natural disaster that's coming. So
how would they know?
Now, remember when I went on your show and we talked about Planet X and we talked about the IRAS telescope and astronomers back in the 1700s, and they all knew this thing was perturbing, and then they sent up the IRAS and then they found it. They got confirmation. They admitted in 1982, 84 in the New York Times. Then they built Rex 84, the concentration camps. Then they were implementing FEMA. FEMA's never been activated like it has recently. Most recently, like we talked about on your show, it was basically only set up for such a disaster. Like, so while people think FEMA was set up for all these natural disasters and it's been working and and whatever, and they send people to these domes and all this stuff during hurricanes, great. It was actually implemented because they knew what was coming. They knew this perturber was moving into the solar system. I mean, they've openly admitted.
What's a perturber? How did they know?
Okay, so when you have a planetary body or a binary component to our sun, like another failed sun, a brown dwarf star system moving in, or a massive planet, possibly 5 times the size of Jupiter, possibly up to 300 times the size of Jupiter. It's pulling and tugging on everything. It's also affecting space weather. And this is perturbing. Now, space weather can affect health.
Solar storms and stuff like that?
Yeah, all of that can affect our health. All of that also dovetails with these comets coming in, and how when comets come around, it's scientifically proven that they cause disease, famine, and everything. They found all sorts of viruses in our atmosphere right now. They're very worried about this disease from space. But in my opinion, my investigation's just gone way beyond this. I'm not really looking into any of that. Now, what I'm looking into is whatever is coming, they know is so bad, and they know when it's coming, and they know about when it's coming, that they're gauging the breakdown of society. They're locking down the entire world's population. It has nothing to do with America, although America is going to get the biggest hit. How do I know that? I don't know. They know that. And that's in their paperwork, and I'll show you. There's government-linked intel agency, this Deagle report. They forecast 2/3 of the U.S. population will suddenly die off by 2025. The highly rated government-linked intel agency Deagle has updated its latest annual report, which now forecasts that over 2/3 of the United States populace will not be living by 2025. That's right. They won't be living. They'll actually be either dead or displaced, which, if true, would be a reduction of 227 million people from the current count, which includes a total of 327 million U.S. inhabitants. The question is, what type of imminent event or natural disaster does the agency's think tank know is coming? Based on the list of the agency's clients and partners, it's safe to say that something is likely headed our way. Look at the list for yourself. So they're in with like the National Security Agency, Stratfor, the World Bank, United Nations, NATO, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OSCE, and the Russian Defense Procurement Agency. By the way, the Russians already built underground bases for their people, and so did China. They're putting up signs right now telling people, get ready to get into your underground bases that we built for you. And this Deagle report comes out and it's saying, hey, look, this population is going to drop on a world scale. I included our interview from last time in this article, but it's on a world scale, things are looking rather grim. Deagle forecasts an 18.2% drop in world's population by 2025. That's a reduction of about 500 million people worldwide. Wow. Coincide Georgia Guidestones. So with the forecasted 69.5% reduction in the U.S. population by 25 versus the forecast 18.2% drop worldwide, it seems as if the United States may be heading into a shitstorm of some type.
Now, technical terminology.
So when you look at this, you scroll down in this article a little past that, Jason, and there's a map, and it shows the 100-mile band around the United States. It also shows the coastlines. This is where 2/3 of the U.S. population lives. Magically, wow. That matches that number. Magically, that matches that number. Now, they're talking about these asteroids. When they come in, they can cause waves 400 feet high. There's also the potential of retrolock with Earth when a passing planetary body or celestial object such as Planet X or a big planet passes, which people think has happened many times. Actually, there's CIA paperwork pretty much leading on and proving this, but they went in and took cross sections of the Earth. They found out that there was major solar activity and all sorts of stuff going on every single time or pretty much every single time or every other time this planet possibly and potentially passes, that's documented all throughout history and every civilization throughout history as passing and causing disruptions. So they think there will be a crustal displacement, and the crust shifts within minutes or hours all at once. They have evidence of this. The CIA
so what does that mean? That sounds like earthquakes.
Shift coming. If this planet passes super close this time, I'm not saying it's coming and I'm not saying it's happening, but it pretty much all signs are pointing to this. All the information is pointing to this at this point. If it is, when it's like a cycle. It looks like throughout history. If you look at it, when this thing comes closer, it's like a 13-month inbound period and a 13-month outbound period that has extreme. This is when you're noticing extreme. This is like the flood of Noah. This is like the flood out of the Bible, the great flood. Things happen. Things can move. When this thing gets super close, it might put Earth in retrolock for a couple days and actually slip the crust.
What is retrolock?
Yeah, where it basically almost holds the Earth with it still for several days or maybe a 24-hour period.
Hold the Earth still.
Yeah. And this is really well documented. In fact, the CIA is talking about it. I mean, I could get into it more, but what is interesting about all this is this 2/3 of this population that Deagle is forecasted, which all the elites read. And now we've got Bill Gates and Fauci's plan, their whole master plan that basically says COVID was created as a cover to get the whole world going. I mean, it doesn't come right out and say this, but this is what I get out of it. COVID, it's created and they made this whole apparatus because they know disasters are coming. Now, the only kind of disasters they can know are coming. They can't really predict the eruption of a Yellowstone supervolcano or anything like that, but they can if they know this planet's coming in, because they know the cycle of this planet through history, documented history, which they went and raided in Iraq and Sumer and all sorts of stuff. Now,
wait. Now, what was that thing in Iraq? It was something in Iraq about Planet X, right?
Okay, yeah, Operation Planet X, the incursion into Iraq during Desert Storm. It is called Operation Planet X, and they went in and they basically raided the Baghdad Museum and other places that had these Sumerian cylinder sills, and that was going to give them that was going to confirm everything they knew with their satellites as this thing was moving in. Now, there's a whistleblower called in. She's risking her whole job to do this. She called into my show. The Shepard Ambellas Show airs 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, weekdays on the Shepard Ambellas YouTube channel, and it's nationally syndicated on iHeartRadio, and you can find it on all podcast platforms. But this disaster might be coming because this Department of Interior employee called in, and her name's Becca. She called into the Shepard Ambellas Show last Friday to let the listeners know that a new and complex emergency notification system has been put into place and is being tested department-wide. According to the caller, the system is able to send alert text messages to department employees' phones and emails in a robust fashion. I work for the Department of the Interior. This is a quote. I work for the Department of the Interior, and this Tuesday, I guess, we changed to a new emergency notification system, and it's literally called the Department of Interior Emergency Notification System. And quote unquote, we have changed from one system to another, and 3 weeks ago. And so this is the second group of trials of exercises of the emergency system that has gone out. Then she went on to say, to me, that's obvious. It's not coincidence. I followed everything for years now, but right now it seems like things are speeding up. They are making sure that everybody has access to it, and it's way over the top, she says. She says, I've never seen this before. She says, I've worked for the department for almost 11 years. And of course, we all have emergency systems when we have earthquakes, etc. So that's not something new, but this is a bureau-wide exercise. She explained that the department employees are now all stuck in the second lockdown. She predicted the second lockdown that they're going into now. She already told me about this. And then she said all this weird stuff's going on in the background. Like there's all of these data calls that are going out of the Department of the Interior. And they've been asked to send it all to DC. When it comes to appropriations funding, which out of 11 years we've never had to fit every little detail of every little thing we're spending on. They have asked us to tell them in DC every single thing that we're doing. For example, if we're going to be doing a contract or managing a recreation area, DC wants to know about it if it's $30,000 versus typically DC would want to know if it's 30 million. Everything has been done verbally from the top down. All of this information has come from the top management to regionals to management to us. Not a single damn thing in writing has come out. Now, she basically said, Shep, you're right. There's a natural disaster coming. They're shutting this thing down. She doesn't even think they're going to open it back up. She thinks they're closing out the government and the Department of Interior. Now,
how can they close out the government? What do you mean?
This
continuity of government thing you told us about before?
So bad they're kind of closed. They know that the shit might get wiped out. I don't know. You remember how we talked about General O'Shaughnessy bunkering down and all that? You know,
that was the continuity of government thing. You
remember that? Okay. Now they're talking about they're going to replace O'Shaughnessy, and they're going to replace the head of Space Command with one guy that, in my opinion, knows everything about what I'm talking about right now. He knows what's coming. And that's how they're going to keep it compartmentalized. They might drop Trump and replace him with this guy because FEMA's really running the show right now. I kind of talked about it on your show, but when they had the 50 governors declare a certain way, this all goes back to that very specific Stafford Act activation of FEMA to give them the authority to suspend everything, go in the COG like we are, continuity of government. Now we got federal bankers coming out, and they're the new COVID authority. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because you've got an article on Intellihub.com. I think it just came up this morning, right? About this guy, Neil. What's the article there that we're talking about?
Neil Kashkari. He's the president of the Minneapolis Federal Reserve Bank, and he's the former assistant secretary of Treasury for the financial stability under both the Bush and Obama administration. Now, this Neil Kashkari,
pivotal in the TARP, and he was working with Hank Paulson. I did a little bit of cursory looking into this guy. He's an interesting fellow. I don't know if you're aware, but he's married. His wife is his second wife. I was looking into her, and she was quite interesting. There's a lot of connections to, where is it that his second wife is spoken about? Anyway, sorry, keep telling us about him, and I'll look for this.
Basically Deep State New World Order player.
Absolutely.
And Neil Kashkari, he says the only way to save American lives now from COVID-19, this is the president of Minneapolis Federal Reserve Bank, the only way to save lives now from COVID is to fully lock down the entire nation and its inhabitants. That's right. So he says that's the only way we're really going to have a real robust economic recovery. And this is what he said on Face the Nation. Otherwise, we're going to have flare-ups, lockdowns, and a very halting recovery with many more job losses and many more bankruptcies for an extended period of time, unfortunately. And then he goes on to say, if we don't do that, We just have this raging virus spreading throughout the country with flare-ups and local lockdowns for the next year or two. Now, remember, I'm the only guy in the media that was telling people the lockdowns were going to go on for years. And I said this in February-ish. All right.
Yeah, so you said it right away when it started, and I was reluctant, but I'm believing you now.
No, I mean, I was analyzing this coming out of China, and I think I was already went on a show, and I was like, man, they might try this here, and they might not lift them. And
let's talk about China for a second, because wait a minute, I want to point out a couple things to you here about our friend Neil, whatever his name is, from the Federal Reserve there in Minneapolis. So the point that I had found, just in looking at this public information about the guy that's posted on Wikipedia, his ex-wife is Meenal Jaishankar, and he's a Hindu guy. He's from India, and I have many friends from India, nothing against India. He's married in a traditional North Indian Hindu ceremony, which I've attended weddings like that in Chicago, which is interesting for viewers of David Hawkins. And his wife supported him through his time at the Wharton Business School while she was an engineer Shepard at Lockheed Martin. So that's very interesting. He's remarried now to a second wife who is Christine Ong, and she is an interesting person as well. She, I found out, was where are her connections here that I wanted to show you. I don't know if you've gone into any of this with this guy, but I found her on LinkedIn, I think. She's the senior manager for this thing called CWT. She's worked for Bloomberg, which we know that Mike Bloomberg is a globalist puke. She's been working for Bloomberg for a long, long time. She's a reporter. She's from China. Went to Columbia University. This is what I wanted to look at. The East-West Center. What do you know about this East-West Center, Shep?
That name's come up before, but I haven't really got into it ever. Yeah. Do you know anything about it?
I don't, but like you're saying, it's come up before with some questionable people. The symbol is reminiscent of other things we've looked at with Bishop Gators, and this just, I don't know, this kind of generic name, it just strikes me as kind of like a great place for the CIA to be recruiting, people. And
absolutely. This guy's total deep state. Kashkari. So, he's a Republican Federal Reserve banker, but, he wishes to secure another stimulus package. Now, this is what's crazy. So this guy, imagine, he literally says, this is his philosophy. Well, actually, it's whoever's telling him all this stuff. So it's probably his math philosophy. But basically, they're saying, lock it all down, bankrupt all Americans, shut all their businesses down, tell them they can't go out of their house, and that's somehow going to save the economy. But in a weird sense, he's right, because they're actually going to give them trillions of dollars. That's right. And he knows it. And so they're going to get this other bailout. But Jason, this is going to be the last and final bailout that the United States ever sees.
Why do you say that? Because everybody's going to be killed by this national disaster?
I just feel like it. I can see this fire sale-like behavior. I see their documents. I'm reading their white papers, and it just looks like it. Whatever's coming may start ramping up so hard. So look, it's hard to gauge, but I was calling all these events like almost to the day before. I put like a little bit of thought into this, but something's coming. We're in a period right now that's things could potentially happen in the next 6 weeks, but I feel like after that, in between, from then till the end of the year is going to be really weird. But it's almost like they're just expecting a total blowout of everything, because that's what they're basically letting all that happen. They're trying to put robots in all the Walmarts and everything. They basically know what's coming. Now, Trump extended the National Guard to where they can respond to the the end of the year now, till December 31st. So he's put a memorandum out on Monday, which expands the use of the National Guard, authorizing guardsmen to respond to COVID-19, while at the same time allowing for the
What does that mean? How are guardsmen responding to COVID-19?
And the facilitation of economic recovery in the United States. And I put, i.e., as society breakdowns, more and more National Guardmen will be seen on the streets. So the carefully crafted memo, it goes on to it's addressed to the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Homeland Security, and it uses the Stafford Act again, Section 502 of Title 32 of the U.S.
Remind us what that is, the Stafford Act?
Well, I'm not an expert on it. I was at one time, but basically I've forgotten about it because I had so much information go through my mind. But This was the president used also to enact FEMA and the state of emergency and COG and all this. So this is all working hand in hand with this coming disaster that they're knowing about. Now, they have this carefully crafted memo. It's coming out and it says that there's going to be hot spots and things are going to reemerge, but it's like prepping everything for military on the streets, but it's also prepping for total imminent economic collapse, essentially. Now, this is where it gets really weird. So you know how they had the Event 201 towards the end of last year?
Yeah.
And I now told you how there's a body over and above everything that it looks like the World Bank's running and the World Health Organization and all the players involved. And that's how they're running out this COVID op. And the COVID op goes through the G20, the G7, the G77, all these. And then they've salted up their members in every government and they've put their people in place and they're running this program. That's why you're seeing this all worldwide. Now, it's not about COVID. It's not about the racketeering. Now, this is a fire sale and they're going to not let a good crisis go to waste. But before all this pandemic or anything, I now have evidence that the U.S. government knew about all this and was even going to get crazier with it. So they now have an executive order. I found we had Roy Potter on and he was talking about it and I looked it up and it says executive order on modernizing influenza vaccines in the United States to promote national security and public health. But the thing is this was September 19th of 2019. So in September 2019, by the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and laws of the U.S., including 301, Title 3, anyways, it goes on to say that, vaccination is the most effective defense against influenza, despite recommendations by the CDC that nearly every American should receive influenza vaccine. However, seasonal influenza vaccine levels in the United States have currently reached only about 45% of the CDC goals. All influenza vaccines presently in use have been developed for circulating or anticipated influenza viruses. These viruses must be reformulated from each influenza season because you know how that is.
Vaccines. Yeah.
And then
I don't buy any of this.
No. So additional research is needed to But then this executive order goes on to say how the current domestic enterprise for manufacturing influenza vaccines has critical shortcomings. Most influenza vaccines are made from chicken eggs and all this stuff. And then it says there are unsuitable for efficient and scalable continuous manufacturing platforms. So now it starts getting into they got to scale up manufacturing.
Yeah, but why is that? Don't we have a virtually unlimited supply of chicken eggs and chickens are constantly making more of them? Seems like a good way to grow.
Yeah, and it says this seasonal influenza vaccine market rewards manufacturers that deliver vaccines in time for influenza season without consideration of the speed or scale of manufacturers' production process. This approach is insufficient to meet the response needs in the event of a pandemic. Now, this is before the pandemic, and it says, which can emerge rapidly and with little warning, magically. Because the market does not sufficiently reward speed, and because a pandemic has the potential to overwhelm and compromise essential government functions. So now they're talking about it all of a sudden compromising government functions, like they just thought that through, including defense and homeland security. Whoa. The government must take action to promote faster and more scalable manufacturing platforms. So when Trump came out in like February or March and he's talking about scaling up vaccine production, having GM do all, they already had this in the works.
Well, ventilators is what he had GM doing.
Now
But
with them, they didn't use these ventilators. And yeah, someone could have profited off the ventilators and they could have added them to the stockpile. But remember what I was saying all along, they had these trauma hospitals set up. We know John Colin came out and said, look, they rolled them up the next day after the asteroids converged. Remember?
Yeah.
We're going into many different lockdown eras because there's many different convergences that are going to happen now. Now we're going into multiple convergences. Things can hit, they can mitigate them. They're locking down. You're going to see field hospitals start popping up again. I already saw some of them. Now, we're going to pull out the whole 9 yards. We must be entering a vulnerable phase. But this is all going to ramp up until it's just totally blown out. They will have everything on the streets. They're going to do full martial law. I mean, this is weird. Now, there's also the JPL Sentry system detected an asteroid impact risk on November 2nd. Now, this is like right before the elections, basically. And this is only a small asteroid, kind of, but it's an Apollo-class asteroid named 2018 VP1. I could have swore they named that Biden a long time ago, like a year ago. But this is what's weird about this is only one of 29 objects. There's only 29 of these objects listed by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory Center for Near-Earth Object Studies as having, this thing has a 1 in 204, excuse me, 1 in 240, just a straight up 1 in 240 chance of colliding with Earth on November 2nd.
Wow. How do they calculate that? That seems like better odds than winning the lottery, which somebody does every day.
I was just thinking, so that's pretty good odds of winning the lottery on that day right before the election.
Or losing, depending on your point of view.
Yeah, so scientists have warned that, something like this hits in the ocean, it can cause like 400-mile waves. But look, this isn't like, one of these objects isn't the thing to worry about. And, I mean, it might be at one point, but I think that we're ramping up. We're going to see space. It's going to affect health. Space weather is going to affect health. Solar flares. It's going to affect communication. Things are going out. Things are happening. We're seeing grid failures. There's explosions. There's lightning's at an all-time high. Duration of lightning strikes at an all-time high. The Earth is dissipating and receiving more energy. Something is going on. They all know it. All signs point to, when I see in their white, they're basically now relating that they laid out a whole COVID scheme worldwide, and yeah, they're going to profiteer off of it and make all this money as it happens, but they're basically just setting up the world for a natural disaster. It actually goes back to Ronald Reagan's speech, which he gave when he said that a disaster, after they sent up the IRAS telescope in 1982 and they already discovered what was coming, he gave this speech, the world will come together when there's a threat from space. That's exactly what it was. In June 2018, they put together the White House mitigation plan. They made international working groups. They started working on this. The asteroids started moving in. Look, there's asteroids now. There was 5 passed the other day. They didn't even know about it till they passed. I mean, this is getting insane. Now Alex Jones is talking about the asteroids.
Huh. You mean as a result of hearing you talk about it, or what?
Right.
What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, and he's linking it now. He didn't really get into it. He just gave I don't know what you call it, like a line leader to bait, because he's like kind of just saying like this can happen. But now, as how he did it is he was talking about all of his continuity of government information, and I think he comes out a little late on this stuff because Intellihub, how I come out. And I just do it, but little leery. So but now he's realizing all this information I got on this, and that like you and Colin have put together too on these shows that we've done, is all coming to a head, but it's dovetailing with all the continuity of government information. And I think that's the realization he's coming to right now.
So it's a small 6.5 foot wide asteroid. However, it's moving with such tremendous speed that the force or the kinetic energy or whatever it is, if it were to hit, will be so tremendous it would have worldwide impact. Isn't that right?
Well, and I don't know if they're expecting debris with something like that. It's weird that this is listed. I find this very bizarre. They're only listing, I don't know. I know we're moving in. I know something's coming. I don't, it's a natural type disaster. Something's coming. Now, there's only one other possibility that, my friend David Wilson was speculating about. Now, the only other thing that could prompt the government to do any of this, and world governments, is something to this effect. Like COVID gives everyone terminal cancer like within 1 year or 3 years or something like that.
What
now,
do you mean?
So and we know that's probably not gonna, going on. I mean, Jerome Corsi speculated about some AIDS stuff. I mean, I'm not gonna rule that out. Also, these tests, actually, what's scary, this is actually scary, actually. Now, these tests, they're actually testing for the binding proteins in AIDS.
Well, I think what you're talking about is Jerome Corsi early on had identified this Indian study talking about the uncanny similarities of unique glycoprotein inserts in COVID-19. It was published in this medical journal that was promptly forced to retract it. This is very similar to a situation that was described to us by Dr. Judy Mikovits when she published something that was unfavorable to Fauci's agenda. She was basically marginalized and forced to take the stuff down. So it says that the paper's been withdrawn, and that's certainly a reason for the casual observer to dismiss it. But it raised a number of points that are difficult to explain. Like, how did these inserts get there? Dr. Mikovits told us, Shep, that it's possible when they grow these viruses in the process of vaccine research, they're growing these viruses on living cells, simian tissue, bat tissue, whatever it might be. And the target virus, in this case, COVID-19, coronavirus, that's present. They're deliberately doing stuff with that. But there are also viruses that are indigenous to that species. So by creating a vaccine where you're growing the virus on bat cells, you could be introducing bat viruses into humans that our immune systems are not capable of defending us against. And actually, the bat virus may be more dangerous to the recipient of the vaccine than the virus they're being inoculated against.
Now, so it's possible that, everyone that's been infected with COVID could incubate later or something and get AIDS or something. So what is scary about this, and I'm not really trying to investigate the COVID thing, because I kind of just think it's just a straight up cover operation for this natural disaster that's coming. But it's scary when I find out the tests actually test for these proteins that are in AIDS. Now, so they're actually going around basically testing people for AIDS, and they're getting positive results.
What do you mean? Like, a lot of people have AIDS and don't know it?
So the tests...
How could they not know? Doesn't AIDS cause you to basically have a catastrophic health collapse in pretty short order?
Well, okay, so this is what's scary, and I mean,
perhaps they're finding these glycoproteins that are a component of HIV.
You got glycoproteins that they found that Corsi was talking about. But now, if I literally found out that these tests are testing for that, now that's a little concerning in a weird way.
Why?
Because, well, if you've invented a test that tests for these AIDS-like proteins, then do you believe that, then do the people behind this test believe that this AIDS-like thing can be incubating within this COVID and it's going to drop on people like in a year or two? Do you see what I'm saying? Like what? Like it's kind of odd that they're testing for those proteins, but also the tests are just testing for coronavirus antibodies and common cold. So it's very suspicious suspicious. But like, I'm not going down that route right now with my investigation, just because I think that I can see how the government's positioning, and I got whistleblower intel, and it's just like they're just like shutting this thing down. Like, they think something's on the way, and I mean, unless this thing's going to activate AIDS and just kill everyone.
Well, so wait a minute. We've got some comments coming in. First of all, I think a lot of people are wondering if you mean human immunovirus, the virus that leads to acquired immune deficiency syndrome. I don't think you can detect.
Yes, right. So there's from what I understand, those kind of like those proteins that are involved in that bind things, but they're involved with the immune deficiency virus. They're also, and I'm not an expert on this and I haven't really got into it, but like, people should probably go check into this. The tests are actually testing for that, which means in a way they're kind of testing for AIDS, and people are getting positive results. Now,
they're testing for HIV, you mean? But let's be careful about that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, certainly it lends some amount of credibility to this study out of India where, I mean, if they know that COVID has these glycoproteins, then testing for the glycoproteins seems like a pretty sensible way to test for COVID. So but why are they denying the veracity of this paper if they're testing for those
right? So this has me split. Now, right here, I'm split on this. Natural disaster, because I see it in their paperwork. They're literally talking about natural disaster, but they're also talking about a possible reemergence of something like a bioweapon or something. Now, so is AIDS going to emerge in everyone that got COVID and just like all of a sudden wipe out 18% of the globe and 2/3 of America? Why would it pick America specifically? Or is there a natural disaster? We got 2/3 of the people on the coastlines in America. It's a vulnerable country compared to others. And 18, I don't know. Something's not, I see the verbiage is papers. They're using natural disaster now in COVID papers, and they're using the words like, coming bioweapon attack, now, stuff like accidental.
Okay. A couple more questions for you here. A lot of people are asking why you're wearing the sunglasses. Frankly, I think you look very cool today. I like the sunglasses.
It's just the look for today.
Right. And they're complaining that we shouldn't trust somebody in cheap sunglasses. Those look like nice sunglasses. Those could be Ray-Ban aviators and very expensive, and I trust you.
Well, they don't have to trust me, but they're listening to the guy that called everything to the day, almost months in advance, months and months in advance. You're listening to the only guy in the entire mainstream, the only guy out of all mainstream reporters and all alternative news reporters. You're listening to the only guy that told you these lockdowns were going to go on forever. I mean, months before even one guy said that.
I think it's also important, Shepard, for people to not rely on this notion of looking at a person, whether it's you, me, whoever, and saying, oh, I trust this person or I don't trust that person. People should focus on the information, and even if it sounds difficult to believe, they should go and do the research. And if the research leads to evidence that supports what you're saying, it's irrelevant what they think about you.
Here's another thing. It's just plain and simple. I am the most written journalist in the entire world on COVID, with over 350 written reports, and I have probably over 50 video reports on it. I'm literally the most written journalist in the entire world. Now, you can go read anyone else if you want and believe them. I don't care. I mean, it's up to these people. They can go check.
Right. Robert says, mic drop. And I agree with that. I do want to remind people, if they appreciate this information, they should go to intellihub.com/contact/donate. You can also just go to intellihub.com and tap on the donate tab up here. You can support Shepard and his reporting at Intellihub through PayPal, and I think it's a great way to do that. We're getting close to the end of our hour here, Shepard. This is a lot of information for people to absorb. Anything else you want to cover before we wrap up today?
Just like when I say I'm the most written journalist in the world on this, I am, and it's all provable. And if you want to believe the lady at the mainstream news that's reading off a teleprompter that checked into this for 10 minutes,
Right.
or do you want to believe the guy at the New York Times that wrote one article about it that checked into it for like a day, or do you want to talk to or listen to and read what the guy who's been reporting on this from day one, 16 and 18 hours a day. I do this. I read their white papers before I even eat breakfast. I wake up at 4 o'clock and I eat breakfast at 2 p.m. because I'm
Whoa.
busy reading their white papers every day. It's what I do. In and out. Intellihub.com. Obviously support my work. You're doing good work, Jason. And, people need to really listen to people like Crowdsource the Truth, John Colin, Shepard Ambellas, because these clowns in the media probably have at the most 20 hours into this. So,
Yeah. Well, the other important point to keep in mind, Shepard, is that when you're talking about these major news outlets like the New York Times and CNN, I mean, these are multi-million and multi-billion-dollar operations that are supported by corporate advertising, that are trying to sell people stuff, including some of the pharmaceutical companies that are behind these vaccines. So, presuming that the things that you're raising are accurate and correct, this is going to be stuff that the vaccine manufacturers, the pharmaceutical companies, the giant military industrial contractors, including companies that produce consumer products, things like General Electric. A lot of people don't necessarily realize the tentacles these giant corporations have, and they exert their control by paying some of the very same journalists that you're talking about. So the journalists themselves may not even know that they are disseminating a message that has an agenda that comports to that of these giant corporations. When people support news reporting coming from places like Intellihub.com and Crowdsource the Truth, it's their sponsorship that supports this. So without them, we wouldn't be doing it. And this is one of the ways that I personally have, I strive to guarantee that people can know that when they support Crowdsource the Truth, it's their interest that I have in mind. I mean, I'm just a guy like everybody else watching, as are you. So I do hope that people will go to Intellihub.com, check all these things that Shepard is saying, look into them yourself. And by all means, of course, financially support Intellihub.com. You can find the link right there on the home page. Last words, Shepard, before we close it out.
Well, just you and I both don't do this to be seen and heard. We're literally dedicating our lives. Look, I had a targeting team show up over here. I'm not even joking. I mean, it's getting pretty real, people. So, what, you got a handful of people doing this? Why, people can go watch the mainstream. I just laid it out. The guy that works for the mainstream, he's doing his whole family thing. He's got to drive to work. He gets to work. They give him a teleprompter. He reads it. I'm literally waking up within 5 minutes. I'm reading white papers. I don't eat breakfast till 2 p.m. I do this until about 9 o'clock at night. And I get up and do it all over again. I'm writing, I got 3 reports out, 1 to 5 reports out a day by 11 o'clock. I mean, the average journalist in the mainstream, they're lucky to get a report done a day. Then I'm doing a full-on radio show. I'm doing other shows. I mean, it's like people like Jason Goodman, myself, and a handful of other people are really doing this. It's just, we're risking our lives for this, really. And like I said, we don't even do this to be seen or heard or anything. I'm just doing it because it's something I'm passionate about, because I'm not a slave.
Yeah. And, I haven't spoken about this just yet, but only a few days ago, I received another, what appears to be a direct threat from someone alleging to be a former CIA agent of what probably is going to be another lawsuit. So, I mean, they love these threats. They love these fake lawsuits, but it's a major pain in the ass. It occupies a lot of time, a lot of opportunity cost.
Training and targeting. It's how they do it. And they'll break the alternative media until just a few corporate people are left and they control the whole narrative. That's why it's important to support Crowdsource the Truth and Intellihub.
Thank you very much, Shepard, and thanks to everybody who's been watching us today. I will be back in just a short while. Shepard, we're going to have one of the most amazing alternative news mashups in the history of alternative news. I have not publicly announced it before right now, but Bill Clinton is going to be shaken in his depends when Charles Ortel interviews Larry Nichols coming up at 4 p.m. on Charles Ortel is Closing In. So I hope people will join us. You know, it's not going to be seen, unfortunately, on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel, 100 and almost 14,000 viewers strong, but people can go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Become a sponsor and you're going to be able to enjoy those live streams. You can, of course, also go to Crowdsource the Truth 2 on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to the Shepard Ambellas channel on YouTube. You can hear his radio show there, and you can see all the videos that Shepard produces. Shepard, thanks so much for joining me again. It's always great having you on the show. We'll get you back real soon. I certainly hope you're wrong about all this, but you've got...
You too again. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I was hoping I was wrong last time. And then we found out John Collin came in and said, look, there was that convergence of asteroids, you know, and then I said, look, it's not over yet. You probably remember that. I said, look, this is going to continue. Now we're in lockdown after lockdown. They're going to keep it going. They're going to break the American people. About the time you see a total blowout of society, this natural disaster must be getting super close.
Wow.
I mean, that's the only my assessment of it. I don't know.
We're going to keep our eyes on that. I hope people will share this video around, because anytime the social engineers attempt to shut it down, and this is an operation coming from social engineers, because you notice we're still here on YouTube on Crowdsource the Truth too. So they're obviously focusing their attention on preventing me from getting this information out wide. I hope our viewers will help us do that. Shepard, I'll speak to you soon, and I'll see everybody at 4 o'clock. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.